It may have taken them nearly a whole season, but they have finally given us an episode of Doctor Who. What a concept. Obviously, me saying that makes it sound like I'm really negative on what's come so far in Season 1, and just a quick look at the videos I've made in the last few weeks will show you that I'm absolutely a huge fan of what we've had so far. It's just that, and I say this, I've said this in pretty much every video that I've made, these episodes have been major departures from what makes kind of a typical Doctor Who episode. You know, it's playing with the format, the formula, playing with the kind of expectations of what a Doctor Who story is, and doing something interesting and unique with them. But I have acknowledged that, you know, this is a season 1. You know, this is, you know, the first proper episode series of Doctor Who we've had in a long time, the start of a new era, and, you know, playing with the format so much before establishing what the format is, I think is a mistake. To really feel the impact of the kind of subversion that 73 Yards, Dot and Bubble, and Boom are doing, you kind of need to first lay out what we should expect from this show. Because right now, the subversions are what we expect, and a kind of conventional episode is something that hasn't really happened yet. The closest we've come to it is The Devil's Chord, but I had issues with how that episode jumped straight to kind of, this is the scariest baddie we've ever met, Ruby. This is the most dangerous finale level threat. And it's like, oh, okay. And that kind of then takes away from the episode, and it takes away from the structure we know and love of the Doctor and Ruby arrive somewhere, they meet people, and then there are fun adventures and you know, some tragedy here and there, and then they eventually save the day and leave. It's not an itch that I think had been scratched up to this point, and, you know, I think I say as much in some of my videos. So when I first heard the rumblings that Rogue was a return to kind of conventional Doctor Who, I was very excited, and the episode did not disappoint. It was kind of a wonderful kind of normal episode of Doctor Who, and I'd like to dive into why. Right from the cold open, right from the pre-credit scene, you get the sense of like conventional Doctor Who. You know, it's two people in a particular time period, they're talking about something, and then alien goings-on emerge, one of them dies, and then you get title sequence. You know, you get kind of a sense of, oh god, the Doctor and Ruby are going to have to show up and save the day here, and that feeling is kind of like a warm blanket. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like what the show should be. And not in the sense of like, you know, they should stop being interesting with it. They should stop doing clever, unique things with the Doctor and the companion and the show's setup. I don't think that at all, and I've really loved these kind of weird personal stories that we've been able to have by breaking out of the normal box that the show is in. But I do think you should be able to switch on the TV, see that it's a Doctor Who episode, and see something like this 90% of the time. You know, I think it's great to see a particular time period realised so beautifully. You know, we've got wonderful costumes and production design. People have been kind of lamenting the loss of like TARDIS scenes at the start of an episode, you know, like before they actually set out on the adventure, they're in the TARDIS talking about something or other, and I think I get that, but at the same time, I'm not sure where I would include those so far. And even in this one, just having them emerge, you know, we see the ball happening, we see the dance, and then just going, oh look, there's the Doctor and Ruby, they're already there. I thought that was really cute and really lovely. I really enjoy the idea of the companion kind of experiencing history as a form of entertainment, you know, watching it unfold like it's TV. I think that's really fun. It's a fun spin on the kind of time travel experience, and I think obviously I like how it then plays into the villain's whole deal as well. I kind of maybe thought that the Bridgerton angle, like, it was fun, but maybe Bridgerton specifically was referenced one too many times, two too many times. I don't know. I think the idea that, like, you know, the aliens were fans of this time period for its drama, and not necessarily they were fans of Bridgerton. But I guess they are paying homage directly to Bridgerton here more than they are kind of any other story set in this era. So I do understand that, and I think it is fun to have that kind of pop culture connection. You know, they have the songs, the pop songs like Bad Guy, you know, played on a violin or strings, you know, olden days-ified. I think it's fun to do that. Indira Varma was wonderfully, you know, preposterous and indignant as the Duchess. I thought that was a fun performance. One that I maybe would have liked to see carry through for more of the episode, because she's quite quickly replaced by a bird. And I think that's, again, from Indira Varma, I guess it's a maybe more deserving performance from her. Get her to play a villain, get her to play a big ridiculous bird, and I did really like the birds. I thought design-wise, kind of having them as birds just was an inspired idea. Kind of this flashiness, this, they've got bright colours, they've got feathers, they've got this kind of performance going on already in themselves. And I think the bird motif was a really great way to convey that. And obviously they look ridiculous, and I like that they are ridiculous. Their whole plan is ridiculous, and that doesn't take away from the fact they're dangerous, but it is fun to see that play out. It's fun to realise, oh God, these guys are morons. They're kind of, obviously they're really dismissive of human life, and that they are, a threat to humanity, but they've not got some evil plan. They're just ridiculous cosplaying bird morons, and I think that's really fun. I guess the one sort of unconventional component here is Rogue, the space bounty hunter, but I don't think it kind of derails the normal Doctor Who-ness of it. I think it's not the first time we've met someone who is kind of on their own mission. They've got their own adventure going on, and we meet them as kind of adjacent to that. And I think Rogue has that kind of sense of he's the main character of his own story, and I like when that comes across and feels authentic, and it's not just you were invented for the sake of these 40 minutes and you did not exist before that. I think, it's that same kind of sense of like there is more going on beyond what we see that I think you feel with Jack, and at the best of times with River Song, you feel that with River Song. And I think that not to say that he feels like a copy. I mean, Jack is the comparison that keeps being made, but I don't think he really is similar to Jack in any meaningful way. Like the surface level similarities, sure, but I think as a character and as a presence in the episode, he's very much his own thing. I think Jonathan Groff is really good here. It's an understated performance from an actor that we know is capable of being big and loud. I like this kind of reserved, guard up portrayal that is such a good counter to the Doctor's big, he's open, he's this kind of extroverted presence, and I think that pairing works really nicely. I've seen some people say he's dull or boring, and it always annoys me when there's a character that so clearly has, a facade. They've so clearly built walls up around themselves, and to look at that and go, well, those walls aren't very interesting, and it's like, no, hang on. I mean, the Doctor doesn't believe it for a second, and I love that he's able to look at that and go, hang on, this whole stoic, mysterious, grumpy vibe, I invented that. You're not going to fool me with that. And I love seeing him break that down a little, and we get more and more hints of the kind of the real Rogue, really, the kind of the more fun, the more outgoing. And I think the more we see of this character, we know Jonathan Groff is capable of that kind of bigness. So I think it would be fun to see more of that come out as their relationship develops and as the character develops over we don't know how long. But I think, yeah, the idea that he is just this dork and that the Doctor is able to go, hang on, you got your name from D&D, or, you were just listening to Kylie. And I think Ncuti and Groff, they both play that well in that they kind of, the Doctor is pushing that in a really fun, authentic way. And you do see the kind of cracks in Rogue's persona there, and I think that's a really compelling part of the episode. And obviously, as we all hoped, a romance forms between the two of them, and I was really on board with all of it. And I've seen some people say that it was a bit rushed, and I think obviously, yeah, it was very condensed into a short period of time there, both within the episode and for the characters. But I don't think it was too far off like a Madame de Pompadour relationship, really, or even like, I guess the one with Astrid Peth, Kylie coming up again, that one is one that feels like it happens within very much real time across Voyage of the Damned, and I think, yeah, it's very much along those lines. I don't think it's too much of a departure there. The difference now is the Doctor is the one doing the initiating. He's the one going after Rogue, kind of pushing against Rogue's kind of barriers there in a way that is so often the inverse of people kind of, pushing against the Doctor's barriers, or kind of really, the romance is often thrust upon the Doctor, and he finds himself in these situations that he then doesn't protest too much about. So clearly that component of the Doctor does exist, but he's rarely the one to make it happen. But I think that shift and that kind of change in dynamic fits perfectly with what I understand the 15th Doctor to be, with who I understand him to be. He is that extrovert, he is that outgoing kind of, he befriends Ruby, he goes out and does this. It's not a situation that he finds himself in. He's kind of gone out and got it. And I think the fact that it all happens quickly, to me, I got the sense that they were similar enough and they were able to immediately recognize that similarity so much that they were able to, I guess, fast track their relationship and very quickly open up to one another. I love the conversation about the people they've lost, and Ncuti says something like, you have to live each day because they can't. You have to go out and grab life because they're not around to do it anymore, and you have to kind of honor them through that. I think that provides such a lovely depth to this outlook on life that we've seen from the 15th Doctor that some people have said is a little surface level, is a bit superficial, of kind of, yeah, I love fun, I love going out into the world. But no, it's like he has found this way of enjoying life as a way of honouring the people that he's lost, and not keeping, not letting the loss keep him from experiencing the life that those people can't live. I thought that was really lovely, and I think that as a moment in the episode, as a moment for Ncuti's Doctor's character and a moment in their romance, I thought was really strong. I also think it's fun to see a new side of a Doctor or just the Doctor in general. I don't think that necessarily makes me go, hang on, is this in character? It just goes, oh, here's a new side of this incredibly multifaceted man that, of course, there would be so many new sides to. I think having him have this such a kind of obvious crush and getting flustered, and I loved that they found a way within the story to make them dance and to kind of bring them together physically in a way that was within the ridiculousness of the episode. It made sense as part of the plan, but I thought that dance sequence was really lovely, and I loved kind of all the lights disappearing and it just feeling like it was only those two in the room. I always love when there's something that feels like filmmaking is going on and it's not just theatre. They're doing something with the lights there, and obviously you could do that with lights in theatre, so maybe it's a bad example, but it's I liked that as a kind of, this isn't just for show. A moment is happening here between the characters, as well as them kind of faking a moment for the sake of scandal. That kind of physical intimacy is so good and so important, and such a great kind of tactile portrayal of a human experience, and I think it's so lacking in so many on-screen stories at the moment, and to get that in the dance and to get that with a kiss, it is so great. And that is kind of, from a storytelling perspective, not even thinking about the value of the representation there, but I think obviously it's wonderful, and I've seen people talk about how were they to have seen the Doctor as part of this kind of relationship in their youth, it would have had such a good positive impact on them growing up. But even not even putting that aside, but I think just I love when characters are able to express their feelings physically on screen. I think I've loved that kind of physical affection from the Doctor and Ruby. Yeah, it's missing from so many stories these days, and it's missing from a supposed love story within Doctor Who. We've just had, the Doctor and Yaz, and, they are just always stood a few meters from one another going, Doctor, yes, good to see you. Hope you're having a good day. And it's that kind of clinical, inhuman storytelling that Chibnall was so good at delivering to us, and it's nice to have people that just feel like they exist in a space together and they can make the most of that, There were two moments in this episode that I clocked as potential foreshadowing. The first was kind of obvious. It was the battle mode of the earrings, and the second was when the bird version of the Duchess walks in and the bird version of Lord Barton didn't immediately go, yeah, I recognise you as one of my own. He's kind of shocked by it, and I thought, the battle earrings, that'll be quite good if someone attacks Ruby, and their lack of immediate awareness of one of their own, that might be helpful if someone has to pretend to be a shapeshifter. So obviously when Ruby died and then, Bird Ruby walked in, I saw right through that. I didn't at all. I had clocked three things, basically, that, there were battle earrings, that someone could pretend to be a shapeshifter, and that Ruby wasn't dead. But when Bird Ruby walked in, I went, there's Bird Ruby. I hope Ruby's body isn't too badly damaged. I did figure it out quite soon after, but I was embarrassed to have been so initially bamboozled by that. I liked the payoff of the battle mode of the earrings, and I liked that whole sequence. I thought that was fun. I liked that, the jewellery and the song playing in the background was telling Ruby to poker face. The Doctor thinking Ruby was dead was a good moment, a kind of moment of darkness from the Doctor that he wants to make the bird people suffer for killing Ruby. I thought that worked as a kind of dark Doctor moment. I liked the pretty immediate flashback to Carla. I thought that was a kind of effective in the same way that, like, World Enough in Time, Bill gets shot through the chest and then suddenly it's Bill going, promise you won't get me killed, having that kind of, oh god, I've killed Ruby, oh no, Carla just told me not to kill Ruby. It's that kind of thing, I guess, slightly undercut by the fact we all know Ruby's not going to die. But I did think she might be sent to Bird World. The whole situation ends with Ruby and the bird people standing on a machine that is going to transport them to a dimension with nothing in it except them, And I thought, we're going into the finale, we're going into what is going to be a Ruby-centric finale. Maybe, that's the plot of this, that is, Ruby disappears off to Bird Dimension and the Doctor has to go and find her. And I didn't love the idea of that being the plot, but in those moments I believed that it could be. I didn't necessarily buy into the idea that the bird people were enough of a threat that they could, they had to consider sacrificing Ruby to get rid of them. I didn't think that, Groff says something along the lines of, like, or Rogue says something along the lines of, like, if we don't send them away, they'll kill everyone in this room, including Ruby. And it's like, were they that quick to murder everyone? Are they that imminent a threat that there's no other way but to send Ruby to her death in Bird Dimension, really? But that doesn't mean that I wasn't bought into the stakes of the whole thing. And I thought having Rogue be the one to do it and the one to be sent to Bird Dimension was really interesting and really great. And again, something that I probably should have seen coming. Because, it was a character that, going into this, I thought, if he forms a kind of connection with the Doctor, then he has to die. That's the sad thing about this show, is that a kind of, you can't really change the status quo too much. So if you meet a character like this, something has to happen to prevent them being, a mainstay of the show. So I think the fact we know Groff isn't a companion in the next season and all that, I think that kind of tells you early on, and even in the middle of this episode when the Doctor invites him onto the TARDIS with him to travel, it's like, Doctor, don't do that. That is a death sentence to 95% of people you ask that to. So I think the fact he says, find me, and it keeps that story open, and he's something that we can return to down the line, I think that's really exciting, and that's a really kind of great thing to just be hanging over everything that the show does from now on. Is like, Rogue's still out there. When's the Doctor going to go find Rogue, or when's Rogue going to re-emerge as part of the story? I think that's a really exciting way to end it, and much better than the character just kissing the Doctor and then dying. I'm really happy with how that ended. Let's talk about some miscellaneous things. I was disappointed not to have Susan Twist in the flesh in this episode, but it was still kind of fun having her as a painting. They're really starting to notice her now, but I think it is interesting that she's kind of like part of, I don't know if she's Lord Barton's mum, was that how it was? But, she's not this weird character who's like popping in like always as the tea lady or something. She's part of like family lineages within these stories that kind of makes her role in them feel kind of confusing and interesting, because it's like, she's not just a lady who pops up and is following the Doctor through time. It's like, no, she was Lindy Pepperbean's actual mother. Like, she's Lord Barton's, or the Duchess's, like, family member. It doesn't make sense. She's not just fucking with the Doctor here. It's something different to that, and I think next week is when we actually learn more, and that's really exciting. And I've got to talk about Richard E. Grant, because that was, in the moment that I experienced that, the most important thing I'd ever seen. It's so funny to do that. It's so hilarious to just kind of go, yeah, Richard E. Grant's one of them. He's one of the Doctor's faces. Yeah, that's happened. I mean, obviously he has played the Doctor in Scream of the Shalka. He's been in Curse of the Fatal Death. But to just without elaborating, go, yeah, he's one of the Doctor's faces. We won't tell you when he fits in, where he slots in. I think some people are really bothered by this, and maybe I understand that. I think Chibnall kind of opened the floodgates to just fuck it, with the Doctor's continuity now. Just who gives a shit? There's the ones that we see in the show. They're the only ones that matter until the show makes another one matter. I am past caring. The Chibnall invented 50 gazillion pre-Hartnell Doctors. If you want to chuck in one Richard E. Grant, I do not care. In fact, I think that's funny. What I will say is that moment of seeing Richard E. Grant and looking at all the heads detracted from whatever the fuck Ncuti Gatwa was saying in that scene. Like, he was explaining that he was from Gallifrey or something. I can't tell you. I have watched that scene twice now, and I cannot pay attention to what he's saying. Maybe it could have been a great moment for the character, but it is, you are distracted from the actual character stuff that's happening in that interaction by the fact that a new Doctor or an old Doctor was just canonized in a floating head that was going past. And I noticed that Jon Pertwee looked weird. I was like, that's a weird old Jon Pertwee. Like, that's a kind of very late in the day Jon Pertwee. And I thought maybe that's 5 Doctors. It isn't 5 Doctors. That's from Dimensions in Time. And I think that's really funny as well to use that as a source and, I don't know, inadvertently or very deliberately canonize, in the eyes of some people, that whole clusterfuck. I think that's great. I think that's an objectively funny thing to do. I think that's all I have to say about this episode, and it feels like, this is an episode that I've not dug into quite as deeply as I did like a 73 Yards or a Boom or a Dot and Bubble, but I think there's less to dig into because it is less of a departure from what we expect from Doctor Who, or what we should expect from Doctor Who. And I think, but that in itself is a huge point in this episode's favour. It is a kind of shining example of why the Doctor Who format, your typical Doctor Who format, is so good and so strong, because you're able to get a one-off episode that adheres to it quite well and have it be so wonderful and be so, I don't know, it's exciting and fun and interesting and moving, and it doesn't have to be crazy to achieve that. And I think, yeah, it's a real testament to why Doctor Who is such a great show. And it's also a shining example of why it's good to get new, fresh voices on the show. This is the first time a Doctor Who episode has been written by writers that are new to Doctor Who, written by writers who are not the 3 showrunners of New Who since February of 2020, and I think that is insane. We've seen the value of bringing, fresh talent and new voices onto the show. We've seen what that can do for it, and to be so limited, I think, is a real shame. And I think it's kind of at this point that I really mourn the loss of longer seasons. I think we should have lots of these scattered about the place in amongst the Russell T Davies episodes. I mean, this was Bryony Redman and Kate Herron who wrote a script that fits wonderfully with the vibe of what we've seen so far, but isn't a Russell T Davies script. I think in some ways it's better, it's smoother, it's less prone to Russell T Davies's shortcomings. It kind of it's not an insane departure. It's not a kind of, give these guys the show. They look at their style that they're bringing. It kind of fits within the RTD style, but it is very much its own thing within that. And I think that is really lovely, and I hope they come back. But I also hope they're not the go-to, not Russell writers. Right? I don't think it should be kind of Russell writes 5, these guys do 1, Stephen Moffat does 1. That would be really rubbish. So hopefully, Russell has, written most of season 1 because he's getting the ball rolling and he has full control, and then he can pass that over and do something else. He can potentially be a little less hands-on when it goes to the next one. I hope that is the case. In an ideal world, we'd just be getting started with this season, right? We'd be 6 episodes in and it's like, wow, it's really finding its groove, but we instead have to look at it a little more holistically, like, the season is nearly over, how have you found it? That feels really odd, and I think, yeah, I hope maybe one day we return to slightly more episodes per season. Maybe it's not possible, but I hope maybe within a season then we get more kind of filler episodes, right? The kind of episode that doesn't advance some larger story and is just something like this, something completely its own wonderful thing. That's what I really hope. But as always, I would love to know what you thought of this episode. I'd love to, talk about it down in the comments. Do you agree with me that the last 4 episodes have been quite an impressive run of Doctor Who? I'm not sure off the top of my head the last time we had a 4-episode run that was this strong. And even this season, I don't think we've had a real bad episode yet. I mean, some people will point to Space Babies. I would say that I prefer Space Babies to Devil's Cord, but I still wouldn't point to Devil's Cord as being, a stinker. So I really think, this season is in a strong place going forward. But yeah, do you agree with me there? And are you excited for next week? Tell me what you think about Rogue, the romance, the Doctor, Ruby, Bridgerton, my poker face joke. I quite liked that one. Thank you very much for watching. Please like this video, share this video. I'm really happy with how much attention and views these Doctor Who videos are getting, but it would be nice to expand that audience a little bit. Subscribe to this. If you're not coming back here to talk about Doctor Who with me every week, what are you doing? This is the place to be. I'm in my basement. It's 10 minutes past 3 in the morning. I'm exhausted. I was out celebrating my friend Lucas's birthday. Happy birthday, Lucas. This is what my channel is, and we have a great time. So subscribe to that. I hope to see you back next week. I'll see you soon. Love you lots.